July 5, 2015. An Ethiopian journalist sitting in Virginia answers a call and hears that his source has been found dead. A moment later, a Saudi women's rights activist vanishes from her London apartment. In Mexico, a lawyer opens his phone and finds photos taken inside his own bedroom. Nothing obvious connects these events until someone begins uploading 400 gigabytes of stolen files from a company called Hacking Team. The files are a bombshell. They reveal that the people who built and sold digital weapons to governments, the same tools used to break into phones and silence dissidents, had been compromised from the inside. And the person behind it didn't stop at a leak. They stayed in the system, watching, listening, and recording the very company they had exposed. 4 months earlier, under a different name, a curious programmer had run a simple search. Hacking Team network diagram. Instead of a dry diagram, he found a LinkedIn profile for a network engineer who listed exact hardware models the company used, including an old Sonic Wall VPN appliance. The firmware version listed was ancient and unpatched. What followed was meticulous, patient work. The hacker, known to the world later as Phineas Fisher, built a clean, air-gapped test environment, bought an identical Sonic Wall unit on eBay, and began probing. He found the expected weakness. The device accepted firmware updates without verifying digital signatures. Over weeks, he wrote a custom backdoor, folded it into fake firmware, and guaranteed it would keep the device functioning normally while secretly opening a remote access port. On April 12, 2015, the poisoned firmware was delivered. The VPN rebooted for only 17 seconds. When it came back, Hacking Team's gateway to the outside world belonged to somebody else. From that single entry point, Fisher mapped the whole internal network and began pulling treasure after treasure, passwords saved in plain text, screen recordings, backups, and email servers. The company had been so busy spying on others that it hadn't locked down its own house. Passwords like P4SS Word and Wolverine sat in files for anyone on the internal network to read. Backups streamed over unencrypted channels. Fisher quietly tunneled those backups to his own server, booted a full virtual image of their exchange server, and began extracting 6 years of emails. What he found made him stop. Source code. The complete source for Hacking Team's flagship. Spyware. Remote control system code that could turn phones into listening devices, and more. A collection of zero-day exploits, including a flash exploit, so powerful it could hit millions of machines. He realized what he held was not just a company's secrets but weapons that could infect 1.5 billion machines. The leak presented a dilemma: release everything now and force immediate patches that would protect potential victims, but burn the access and lose the chance to gather more evidence, wait and gather more proof, and more victims would be infected in the meantime. He found one final needle in the haystack, a folder labeled Insurance containing emails that proved Hacking Team was tailoring spyware to reinfect devices even after a factory reset. That contract, $2.4 million for persistence. ICE was scheduled for August. Time was ticking. Fisher chose a strategy built for chaos. He waited for the Italian office to close for the weekend, so the company had the maximum delay before discovery. At 11:31 p.m. on July 5, 2015, he placed a torrent containing the stolen files on dozens of seed servers across Europe and Asia. Minutes later, he used a marketing director's Twitter credentials to announce it. The spread was mercilessly fast. WikiLeaks retweeted the post first. Then security researchers, journalists, and even Edward Snowden amplified it. Within an hour, hundreds of thousands had seen the link. Within a day, the swarm had thousands of peers. Hacking Team's executives woke to documents they could never pull back. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Security researchers discovered an Adobe Flash zero-day in the leak and published proof of concept, prompting Adobe to push an emergency patch to over 1 billion devices within 36 hours. Italy's authorities raided Hacking Team. Governments cancelled contracts. Customers were named in spreadsheets that read like a who's who of human rights abuses. Email threads revealed the company's willingness to sell to repressive regimes. Invoices showed how many targets each client had purchased. Prosecutors, journalists, and NGOs began connecting the dots. A 2-year investigation in Morocco collapsed when it became clear evidence had come from illegal surveillance. In Mexico, cartel prosecutions fell apart when phones were shown to be infected. Fisher watched it unfold from inside their own network. Crisis calls, executives trying to explain away emails, attempts to delete accounts. He recorded the CEO telling his board, "We're finished." Employees found their personal details published on paste sites. One developer who used Warcraft 23 as a password struggled to find work for months. Yet the leak did more than destroy Hacking Team. It exposed an entire surveillance marketplace. Buried in the files were technical specs for an advanced tool that codenamed Warrior Pride that could survive factory resets by manipulating firmware and jump air gaps with ultrasonic channels. Hacking Team had lost a $12 million contract for a rival product in Singapore. Now the market's top players were in the spotlight. The world of surveillance is not as straightforward as it seems. It has layers upon layers, from major intelligence agencies at the top to criminal groups at the bottom using stolen or repackaged tools. But when a leak exposed this complex supply chain, the human cost became suddenly visible. Citizen Lab uncovered that dozens of journalists, activists, and lawyers were targeted by these surveillance tools. Lives were changed forever in the wake of this breach. Within days, the fallout spread far and wide. Criminal groups weaponized the Adobe exploit. Ransomware kits incorporated it, and the internet became a more dangerous place. However, emergency patches were able to mitigate some of the damage. Hacking Team, one of the companies involved, saw copycats taking advantage of its exposed infrastructure. Other surveillance vendors also fell victim to breaches. Governments reacted by cutting contracts and tightening export controls, forcing the industry to adapt and evolve. While the cost of spyware rose, smaller countries were priced out, leading to a surveillance gap and pushing the trade into darker corners. Months later, thousands of infected devices were still phoning home to uncontrolled servers. Criminal groups began selling access on dark web forums. A technical guide explaining the breach was released, creating a blueprint for others to follow. Despite years of investigations, no definitive culprit was found, leaving a trail of unanswered questions. In a paradoxical twist, one individual, fueled by curiosity and moral outrage, brought down a company that invaded privacy. The industry adapted, with new vendors like Pegasus filling the void. The legacy of the leak is mixed. It led to better security practices, but also empowered criminal elements with mutated malware. The hacker's final act of making the breach public was a turning point. By sharing the how-to guide, he provided both a warning and a weapon to the world. The fallout reshaped an entire industry, spawning new research disciplines and leaving behind a trail of orphan implants for years to come.